that stack. Whereas if I have a separate DBCS instance, I can pass a variable through that database to get there. So I could write something to the database and then pick it up
so
at the other stack.
Obtain the value from the database rather than in the YAML file.
Yeah, well, you could put it in the YAML file if you wanted to, but then it's obviously hard-coded.
Yeah, well, this is the problem I'm trying to solve. So,
I mean, if you don't want it hard-coded and you want, say, a flag, then you can do effectively define variables which are loaded, or if you put it in a YAML, probably the easiest way is actually a custom component and just read it from the database. Or read it from some source. So as long as that custom component can get where the variable definition is, and then, so I mentioned the init phase, that's where you do that sort of thing. So in that init phase, you'd go and get all the stuff you needed to preload.
Set that to the variable.
Yeah.
Gotcha.
Okay, so you might as well do lab 2 and lab 3. And I'll get a cup of coffee because I didn't get one before. That was a very resigned sigh there. You weren't expecting all this stuff today, were you?
I'm just glad I could answer the EL question.
Okay, it starts getting faster from here on.
Oh.
Once you get past lab 3, we start getting into more stuff. I said there's actually another 2-day advanced course that it's come out and basically, well, we haven't scheduled that one yet, but a lot of it is having built, like for example, the Heineken bot. I built that one. And a lot of this stuff comes from once you actually build them for real, you start understanding the bits that work or don't work in terms of how people interact with them. The one thing you shouldn't do with a bot, as I said, is try and do everything at once. From a design perspective, choose a use case, make it a relatively small use case to begin with, and then get success out of that and then build on it, rather than, we do see people trying to do every use case under the sun with one bot, and that's not a great solution. What we're doing, we're actually building, think of it as master detail bots. So you can define individual domain set bots and then wrap them under an umbrella bot. So rather than having the HR bot, the procurement bot, whatever, you have the Oracle bot.
Within.
Yeah, and within that it works out which one it needs to go to inside that conversation flow. But that would be telling you what's happening, what's coming next.
Have you had any bot integrated in a hybrid app built on Ionic framework?
Yes. In fact, that's one of the things we give away. We have a chat client for Ionic. So it's in the samples. Sorry, no, you wouldn't want to use Ionic, you should be using Jet. It's a far better system. But no, one thing I'll show you,
I'm not convinced with that answer, but yeah.
Jet's actually really good, and it's getting better. The thing which lets Jet down is that you don't have the same Stack Overflow.
Well, Ionic is a framework. Jet is a UI framework. Jet is actually a set of best practice, open source and proprietary JavaScript libraries.
And a lot of gaffer tape.
oj.gaffer tape, thank you. So Jet is not trying to, so if you looked at MAF, I was a MAF fan. So Mobile Application Framework was our Java framework. And it was brilliant. You could build things really, really quickly. The problem I used to get faced with all the time was, but it's so big, and that because it was a Java runtime engine, Hello World was 20 megabytes. However, writing an entire ERP app was 25 megabytes. Math was something that just progressively didn't get bigger because you're only adding metadata, you weren't adding execution. Whereas if you take an Ionic or a Sencha or one of these, the more stuff you build in, and as soon as you use like a Cordova plugin, it just gets bigger very quickly. Now Math was a full framework. Jet, as I said, really is a UI layer that handles binding, it handles all the WYSI UI stuff, but it assumes that you're a JavaScript developer. So there are benefits, and in fact you can actually plug in other libraries into it. So we do have cases of people of swapping out parts of Jet and swapping in other things. So if you want to use, say, EC Code 6 or something like that, you can do that. But as a hybrid framework, if you come across Visual Builder Cloud Service, Visual Builder Cloud Service is our IDE for Jet, and it's pretty damn good actually. It builds mobile applications and web-based applications through a drag and drop environment. So
it's depressingly easy. So as a Java developer, you can just, the amount of boilerplate that you have to write to get an application to do what VBCS does in 5 minutes is just phenomenal.
So if you were to say what was the competitor to say Ionic or let's say Xamarin, Xamarin's probably not a good example because obviously that's a code translator ultimately. Then VBCS would be it. So VBCS allows you to define a lot of think of it as almost ADF for JavaScript, and that you have task flows, you have action flows. But I can then simply say I want an iOS version, and it'll spit it. Even though it's cloud-based, it'll still spit out an IPA file and an APK for you directly off the cloud.
But would it give you like a very hybrid?
It is a hybrid.
It is going to give you a hybrid sort of an experience.
Well, it gives you.
Well, it's JavaScript, so
it's JavaScript. It basically wrappers it in Cordova. So it basically runs Grunt and Maven and all those things in the background, and packages up a hybrid application. But at the same time, it's also you have to say, I want the web version. So it's going to give you responsive design web. So if you decide you want mobile web, it'll do that. Or it'll give you an on-device one, is a Cordova hybrid app. So it's actually pretty nice, actually. It's worth looking at.
VBCS.
Yeah. It comes with
OIC
and a couple of other products.
Yeah, or it's standalone.
Yeah. Standalone?
Yeah.
Okay.
But VBCS is not a framework. VBCS is
no, VBCS is a full framework.
Yeah. It does your data.
So Jet wasn't a full framework, but VBCS is.
So VBCS, you can set up a data model which is shared between apps as well. So you can actually have a mobile app and a desktop app, both using the same data model. So you can have people on their mobile logging faults and.
But it's Oracle proprietary.
Yes.
Well, it's open. I mean, Jet is open source.
Well, it's an Oracle product.
It's an Oracle product.
VBCS is an Oracle product.
Yeah. I'd hardly say it's proprietary though. It's an Oracle product. But the thing that really shows you what's important with VBCS is if you looked at our on-prem applications, they were all developed with basically ADF. So Forms, ADF, or OAF and then ADF. If you look at our cloud-based applications, things like our cloud products are developed in Jet, the SaaS products are all going to be developed in VBCS.
But then if I want to build on VBCS, I need to get a license for mobile cloud.
You can actually get a license for VBCS by itself, but VBCS will be bundled with mobile cloud as well. It's not in the current release because that was a packaging issue more than anything. But you can get VBCS as a standalone cloud service. Now the important thing with Oracle is ultimately you don't buy an individual product, you buy universal credits. So you can use any universal credit on any product. So
and then turn it off when you're not.
and
actively
turn it off when
developing.
you're not using it.
So if you've got a development cycle where you're cutting code for 2 months out of the year, you only need your VBCS license for those 2 months of development, and then you have a minimal for production. And then if you've got a peak where you're doing 3 new projects, you just spool up your credits. It's actually quite good, which is why I was asking about the different dev test and prod environments, because often they just go away when you're not developing, so you don't have a dev environment and a test environment if you're not actively testing.
Yeah, so I mean, from a stack perspective, MCS understands the concept of dev test, so you can promote things. But the big thing is obviously the integration with DevCloud. Yeah.
That's still not available in country, is it?
Don't think it's in Sydney. It might be. It used to be only in.
Because all of your source code is still whichever repository you point it to.
Yeah.
So it's effectively metadata about.
I think it's changed recently. It was originally only in NAS, but it might be in. So are we doing Lab 2?
Yep.
Can I get a coffee?
Get back to the bottom.
information